Hi, Blake. How are you
Hi,
doing
hi,
today?
hi. How's it going?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for inviting me here today to your first podcast episode, I think it is it not?
Yes, it is. Absolutely. Yes.
But we do have a twist because this time I'm not your guest. I'll be the interviewer and I'll be asking you a couple of questions that came up frequently between us, but I think would be very interesting to get like extended answers to. How do you feel about that?
Sure. Sounds great. Perfect.
Nice. At the moment, you are in France or you're still in Germany?
I'm in France at the moment. Yes.
Has it been just as excruciating weather-wise like it is in Germany right now? It's so hot.
It's been very hot, but luckily the air conditioning does tend to, sort of take away some of the problem of the heat. Yeah.
It eases the pain a little bit. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is
Yeah.
something that is not very common in Europe, having air conditioning, I think. But
Yeah.
from what I understand, it is more than common to where you come from, the United States.
That's correct. Yeah.
Have been born in beautiful California, in Burbank, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Basically, right into the heart of Hollywood.
Yeah, I was born in St. Joseph's Hospital, which was the hospital directly across the street from Disney Studios. And this was a kind of unique situation because my father was head of publicity for Disney, and my mother was also assistant animator at Disney. And so, because of that, when she was in the hospital for either my birth or the birth of my brother as well, um, and when she was working, they would have to bring drawings across for her to actually approve. Yeah,
During his stay in the hospital.
exactly. Yeah.
So you're very closely connected to Walt Disney Studios, and I take it.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. My father was the personal publicist to Walt. And so he would, you know, um, frequently get communiques from Walt inviting us to a little get together at his private apartment above the firehouse at Disneyland, or we would sometimes spend the weekend at the Disney Ranch, which was in the Newhall area. And so it was quite unique. Yeah.
That is a whole lot of things to unravel here. Your dad, your mom, both working at Disney's. You mentioned your brother. Are you the younger or the older sibling?
I'm the youngest. Yeah.
You're the youngest.
Mhm.
So maybe just to tear right into it, can you give us a quick overview of what it was like to be basically born into the Hollywood industry, or is that a proper way to think of it?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Basically, the thing is that you know, when we would go to Disneyland, of course, we were there with Walt as well. And so sometimes, we're there watching the, parade, and he's saying, "Oh, where's your father? He's got to be here. It's got to be here. Come on, And we had a party at his firehouse apartment. He had all these little sculptures made out of blown glass. And I thought these were so neat. And I was trying to, wanted to pick them up, and my mother was always going, "Oh God, he's going to break something. Oh my God." And Walt says, "Good, let him break it."
So
He
let me
says,
guess,
"I
his
hate
wife
those
liked
things."
them.
Yeah.
You didn't like them.
Yeah.
How old were you back then?
Oh, I was like 5, 6 years old. Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, going to Disneyland with
Mhm.
Walt Disney sounds like going to church with God. That is
Yeah.
kind of a huge, huge deal. It sounds to me that it's something that I can't really like imagine that work and private life and the family and everything was so familiar, and it seems so yeah connected to each other.
Yeah, well, this is it, and very often my father would come home and he'd get a phone call where there would be like an emergency, and he would have to try and sort out what was going on because what would happen is before home video, very often people would have theaters in their homes to watch movies. And he got a call from the studio from a projectionist who said, "Oh, gee, I just got here. I opened the film for the screening tonight, and it was a movie called The Bears and I, and he's got reels 1, 2, and 3 of Super Dad and reels 4, 5, and 6 of The Bears and I in there. So obviously, what happened was the other half of the movie got sent to Michael Jackson's home by mistake.
Did you get to go to Michael Jackson's place to get them back?
No, actually, what happened was, because since it's a new movie, there were many different copies of the film at the studio. So my dad had to he had to go to the studio, get about 3 cartoons, and give them to the projectionist so he could start those to give them some time. And then what he would do is he would get another copy of the film, the first 3 reels, get those sent over to the main theater. So this way they had a movie to start with. And then afterwards, he had to get a driver to go to Michael Jackson's house and bring the rest of the movie over there to get the thing all sorted. Yeah.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah.
Now, let's dig into that a little bit, because I can't quite imagine what a publicist did back in the day, because today I think of PR, public relations, as something very common today.
Yeah.
Right now, it would be something, I bet, regarding social media. But what is it that your dad did specifically in his job as a publicist?
Yeah, basically, it was dealing with the press, dealing with the actors, and having, creating sort of promotional parties. And so very often when they have a screening for a new movie, they would have a party in a big restaurant, and there you would meet, some of the actors who were in it. And so it's like one time I was there and Christopher Lee was there, and he was a super nice guy, actually, but he was quite happy that I didn't talk about his Dracula movies and that I liked his other films as well. And so he was quite delighted to hear that, and so he was a very nice guy. And,
I take it.
This is something, is things like this you run into very often. And also sometimes they would have a screening for a new film, and my dad would call the house and tell my mom, oh, we're going to have dinner with this fellow from Variety magazine tonight, and then we're going to take him to the screening, and then he would do that, and this just makes it's kind of smooths things over with them. But then on the other hand, internally, since he was sort of the personal publicist for Walt, an interesting story with this is that Walt was supposed to go to the Oscars, and he told his wife, oh, don't bother coming with me. We're nominated for a couple of Oscars, but I don't think we're going to win anything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he won something like, I think it was 7 or 8 Academy Awards that night.
That night alone.
And his wife got so angry that she wouldn't let him in the house. So what happened was he had to come back to the studio, and he had an office in the animation building on the top floor. And what he did was he slept in the office there, because he had a couch and he had everything there. He even had a small kitchen there. And so, but what happens was that the air conditioning was switched off at a certain time, and the windows were all sealed, so he couldn't breathe. So he ended up having to take a chair and smash out the window so he could actually breathe. And my father came in the next morning, came up to Walt's office and found Walt asleep on the couch. He had dropped one of the Oscars and broke the head off of it. And there was glass all over the place from the broken window. So he had to go and call up and get them to change the window and call the Academy and get a replacement Oscar for the one with the head broken off of it, and all these types of things. Yeah.
Do you remember what movies those were for, the Oscars he won that night?
I think they were for the True Life Adventures that they did all these true life adventure films, like Nature's Half Acre and Living Desert and these types of things. Yeah.
Yeah, the light keeps turning off and on
Yeah, I see
periodically.
that. Yeah.
It will be back in a couple of seconds.
Oh, okay, no worries. But your ears are still very
Yeah, you
visible.
say it's working.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
perfect.
I
Yeah,
have
it's very
this
nice.
the screen light here, and it's not connected to the Wi-Fi properly, and it just does that every couple of minutes, just to, I guess, remind myself that it's not all that happy.
Not a problem.
It's not, that's not the topic of what we're talking about here. It's so amazing to hear these kind of stories because Walt Disney is such a prominent character and
Hmm.
such a I think to most people, to me at least, a very mysterious character because from what I understand, he let me say single-handedly crafted the Disney Studios, which are a huge part of the film history of mankind.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
If you look at animations, for example, I love cartoons. I grew up on cartoons, and
Mm.
I love anime because as a child I used to watch those, and it's all of them. Everybody all around the world studies Walt Disney's work and
Mm.
to degree copies that to make their own new stuff, and that's so amazing that to hear those stories firsthand now.
Yeah, because what happened was that you see, my mother was one of the few female operators, animators there, was actually an assistant animator, which is a quite high up position.
Mm-hmm.
Because the way animation works at the studio was that you have what they call the animator or the director almost, who basically just draws the main characters for the shot or scene. And then you have the assistant animator who cleans things up and draws the first drawing and the last drawing of the shot. And then it goes to another person who is called the in-betweener. The
Yeah.
in-betweener draws all the drawings between the first and the last. Yeah. Then afterwards, they will shoot this out and they will make what they call a pencil test. So the original pencil drawings are shot out in black and white to check the animation and make sure it's correct. And
Oh,
then
so you see the
after
motion.
that, yeah, it used to go to what they call the ink and paint department. The ink and paint department is where each drawing was hand traced onto clear film. So it was a clear sort of a 8 by 10 inch clear sheet, and it was actually inked on there. Later on, they used what they call xerography, which was basically is a copy machine with clear paper inside, and it would make a copy of the drawing onto it this way.
Oh, that sounds nice.
Now, what happens then is the color has to be placed on the picture. So then it goes to the paint department where they have thousands of little bottles of paint there, and they have different colors assigned to different characters and everything. And on the back of the drawing, the celluloid inked picture, they actually have to go through and paint all the people in. Then so I have to put the one for the face tone and the costumes and all that type of stuff.
How did your mom get into that role?
She went into art school in New York, and what happened was that she applied at different studios because she wanted to get more into animation. And so after she graduated from the Arts Academy in New York, she came to Hollywood, and she was interviewed by several studios. So she was interviewed by MGM, she was interviewed by Warner Brothers, and then the studio, like she said, had the best equipment and it was the best laid out, was Disney, and they took her on. Yeah.
Is that where she met your father?
Exactly. Yeah. My dad, my mother was there for quite some time. She was working on a film called Cinderella.
Little film
Yeah.
that anyone knows that
Yeah.
one, right?
But what happened was, since my mother was actually born in Cuba and her first language was Spanish, they needed somebody to bring some Spanish speaking people on a tour of the studio. So they asked my mother if she would help out. And that's how my mother and father met, this way. Yeah.
Oh, that's so romantic. So
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Mm.
I didn't know your mom was from Cuba.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
How did
Mhm.
she end up in New York then? That's, I mean, Los
Well, she
Angeles and
first
Cuba, I would kind of
she was in
understand.
Cuba. She was born in Cuba, and then at the time was her family then moved to the United States, and they were first living in Miami,
Hmm.
and then she moved to New York because of the art school there, and then she moved there from that. Yeah.
That must have been very expensive back in the day going to art school in New York.
Wasn't too bad, I think. I think it
Okay.
was manageable. Yeah.
Maybe it's just today that universities get so damn
Yeah.
expensive. Yeah. Oh, that's such a nice story.
But another thing which is interesting is that, when you're growing up in an era without home video,
Mm,
Walt wanted the staff to be able to watch movies at home.
yeah.
And so what he did is he established a second department at the studio, which had banks and banks of projectors that people could borrow
Hmm.
and copies of every single film that Disney did, and sometimes multiple copies of it. So if you said, "Oh, gee, I want to take Mary Poppins home and watch it at home," you could borrow a film projector, a screen, and a copy of the film, and it would be waiting for you there at the guardhouse when you left in the evening, and you could take it home and watch the movie. Yeah.
To me, that sounds like we're segueing into how you got started in and with film and movie. Is that how you got your first?
Well, I got started because what happened was we had um, two screening rooms at home.
Hmm.
We had one for 16 millimeter, and that's how I got introduced into working with film. And then what happened was that my father left Disney for a short time when he went to work for Cubby Broccoli,
Hmm.
did all the James Bond movies and things. And then he came back to Disney after that. Yeah. But what happened was that, like Broccoli said, "Oh, you got to see all the James Bond films." So he sent prints of all the James Bond films over for us to watch everything, and these were all in 16 millimeter. And then he had a colleague who had a 35 millimeter projector and said, "Oh, would Blake want to play around with that?" And I said, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." So they sent that over, and we had another room in the house, which was actually the garage converted into another room. And that became the second screening room. And we put 35 millimeter there with stereophonic sound and everything. And I had some friends who had copies of movies, and we could borrow them from different studios. And, so there was no shortage of things to watch. Yeah.
How did you manage the noise from the projectors? I imagine they were terribly loud.
The 16 millimeter projectors were easy because what we did is we put the projector in another room with a piece of glass on the front. And so it was basically completely closed off. Yeah.
So keep
And
the
it
glass
was
clean,
this,
you're fine.
yeah. And the 35 millimeter projector, I worked very hard on the projector to diminish the noise and take it down to the point that it was just, purring almost. There was very little noise. Yeah.
You fixed it up mechanically,
Yeah,
basically.
mechanically. Yeah.
How did you do that? Loop the right spots or?
Well, changing all the belts and using, instead of chain belts, using rubber belts, and things like
Oh,
this.
okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
How old were you at the time?
Oh, I was about 16, 17 years old. Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
sounds like you had a lot of fun on working also on these things.
Well, it's like people were joking. One guy says, "Yeah, you're the first kid on the block with stereophonic sound."
Yeah, Kids on the Block with Stereophonic Sound sounds like a rap record.
Yeah.
Um, I think this is a great way to also, from what I think to understand, is that this is basically how you got working in the industry, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So you
Um,
were able to gather experiences working as a projector, working on projectors.
Yeah, I was first working as a film projectionist, and I was working in private screening rooms. And so, for example, I was did give you a good example. This director who directed My Fair Lady, George Cukor, wanted to view two movies. And so they rented out the screening room. I came in and ran the films for him and these types of situations. Yeah. Or sometimes we did stuff for the it's called the Filmex, which is it's a film exposition, and they need to screen films to get scenes that they're going to show during the exposition and things like that. And then I would show it for that. Yeah.
I would really like to go further into that, but before we do that, you mentioned your brother beforehand. Is he also working in the film industry? I imagine being that close to the studios, it kind of also rubbed off on him too.
Yeah, he's a director who does documentaries, and he's done lots, mainly they're film oriented documentaries. So, for example, things like the history of the Babelsberg studio, the history of Cinecittà, and things like this. Yeah.
How did he get into it?
Basically from his background, people knew him and things like this. And then he sort of, like all of us, we sort of fall into it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So basically he was somewhere close to the maelstrom of the studios and it just kind of took him in.
Well, exactly, and this is the thing, and like, for example, and when you get older, when I was frequently, my father would take me to functions that normally he would take my mother to. Yeah. And he would say, Blake, I'm going to this thing tonight. Do you want to go? And I said, yeah, sure. Yeah, of course. Yeah. And so in these situations, it'd be things like one time we went to a screening of this is kind of a funny story. It was a movie called The Car, about the killer car, and I was laughing my head off at the preview of it because it was so ridiculously funny, the whole thing, and I couldn't stop from laughing, And the next day, my father arrived home equipped with one of the industry newspapers, which was the Hollywood Reporter, and he says, "You're mentioned in the Hollywood Reporter very prominently."
Okay.
And I said, "Really?" And he says, "Why?" He says, "Apparently the director heard the person who was laughing so uncontrollably during the film and decided to take it back for recutting."
Okay, let me guess. You took it for a comedy, which it was not supposed to be.
No, it's not. It's about this. I mean, this car literally runs somebody over like 20 times,
I'm not quite sure what it says about his directing skills or if it says more about your taste in humor.
Yeah. Yeah. Or then like another evening, which was kind of interesting, was that we had a friend who was the personal assistant to Alfred Hitchcock. And she invited us to a dinner that they were having at Universal Studios. And it was basically for the gentleman who did all the special effects for the Hitchcock films, because a lot of people don't realize that so much these are very specialized special effects things that are done. For example, in North by Northwest, the stuff on Mount Rushmore and the scenes in the UN building is all painted on glass. These are all glass paintings that were done. And this gentleman's name of Albert Whitlock. And so it was a dinner for Albert Whitlock to commemorate his work. And so he was there. Hitchcock was there. And also two of the composers who had done work with Hitchcock was there too. So I met John Williams was there, and also Jerry Goldsmith was there as well.
Just casually, very casually dropping the biggest industry names we have here.
But it was interesting to me, here is Jerry Goldsmith standing next to John Williams, and they're two of completely contrasting people, And it was really interesting because John Williams was a really quiet, super nice guy, very pleasant fellow. And Jerry Goldsmith, a very flamboyant guy, you know, and all
Mhm.
these things.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
That is, I mean, you know that I studied music, right? And hearing stories from John Williams is it's really cool because I love so many of his scores.
Yeah.
But you've talked about um, such interesting people and such big names, and what I feel like always comes up is that those people were very pleasant to be around and very nice. And we're talking the
Precisely.
highest echelons of like people in Hollywood. Is it really that? I mean, from outside, people say, "Oh, those Hollywood phonies," right? We would
No,
get a
they're
bad
very,
rep.
very pleasant. Yeah, very nice. And it was kind of funny because what happened was we had there was a lady who used to work at Disney, and then she moved over to 20th Century Fox. And my brother and I were watching a TV series on television called Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Hmm.
And you can still actually they're running the restored versions of it now on YouTube, and
Hmm.
it's about this atomic powered submarine and all their adventures they have and all these types of things. And it was some very well known actors were in it. There was Richard Basehart and David Hedison, who was also in the movie The Fly and things like this. And it was produced by and some of them were directed by Irwin Allen, who was known as the master of disaster because he did another film called The Towering Inferno.
Hmm.
And so we wanted to visit the set. So we did, and we came over and we were able to see the set of the Seaview and meet the actors and everything there. And as a kid, I remember it's kind of disappointing to see what the real set for the submarine was like because the portholes were just two sheets of glass with bubbly water going between it. And they had these giant 2x4s, planks of wood that they used to rock the set up and down.
But you have to make it cost efficient for television, right?
Well, exactly. And also you can see the tank. We visited that where they shot the miniatures. And
Hmm.
then Fox at the time was kind of a almost like a factory for these TV shows because they were shooting also a TV show called The Time Tunnel there.
Hmm.
And there was also Lost in Space was being shot at the same time as well. We visited the set of this show. And also the 1966 Batman show was being shot at the same time as well. Yeah.
With Adam West.
With Adam West, yes.
Did you get to meet Batman's
No,
original actor?
actually, they weren't shooting on the day I was there.
Ah, too bad.
Yeah, because what happened was that, because of the sets for Batman, part of the show was shot at Fox, and part of it was shot at used to be the old Selznick studio, and some of it was shot at MGM Studios as well. But the Batcave set was actually on the Fox lot. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I
Yeah.
can't imagine seeing something on television, asking a friend about it, and then being invited to the set and seeing the real
Yeah.
set pieces and being able to touch them. Is that
Mm.
was it very common back in the day in Hollywood, or was it due to your connections to studio people and you working in the space?
Well, it's mainly because of our connection with studio people. Yeah. Yeah.
So a bit of luck was also involved.
Yeah. 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 And also, like, for example, near where I grew up, there was a company there called Barris Custom City. And Barris Custom City is a place which actually built the Batmobile there. Yeah. And you could occasionally see it there in the showroom. They had it there because they built, several Batmobiles in case one had an
Mhm.
accident or something like that.
In case Blake came by and one went missing, right?
Yeah, well, because what happened was, the Batmobile was fabricated out of what used to be it was a Lincoln Continental Futura, I believe they called it. Yeah.
Mhm.
And it was a concept car that they made. And this is the shell for it, and then basically they went through and tore it apart for that. Yeah.
That is really so cool because I've seen documentaries on the Batman cars, like all of them, because Christian Bale had this weird tank thing,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
in the latest Batman with Robert Pattinson, they gone back a little bit to making it actually like a car. And in the same documentary, they also talked about the very first Batmobile that was Adam West once, and so cool to hear the origins of it. From all those movies, because you said you had basically unlimited access to the films that were produced at the time, what was your favorite to take back home and watch? Was there something you maybe took back multiple times and watched more often?
Of Disney films, or
let's do two categories: your favorite Disney films, and then just in generally what you like to watch back in the day.
Okay, I'd say my favorite Disney film was 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Yeah, it's a wonderful film. Is beautifully made too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was interesting stories behind that, because my father worked for the company when they were making this picture. And, things like the squids fight sequence was actually shot 2 times.
Mm-hmm.
The first time they shot it in a late afternoon sequence, and Walt saw it and just said, "This isn't going to work." He says it looked like, as he termed it, he said it looked like the Keystone Cops, which was, the old 1920s police film, the way people were running around and all these things going on. It just didn't work. And so what they did, they had to reshoot the entire sequence. And what they did, which was interesting, was they shot it during a storm sequence in the evening. So it's very blue, lots of storm, lots of water. And this way it would hide the cables for the tentacles of the squid. And you don't see the cams that were making the arms flop up and down and things like that.
Well, back then there was no painting out the ropes.
Yeah, no, there was nothing like that. This is it. I mean, things like wire painting and stuff like that. I mean, up until recently, it didn't exist. I mean, this was it. I mean, when I was working on the first Batman film with Michael Keaton, we had a problem where the wires holding up the bat plane was constantly evident. And so we had to try to figure out ways to hide it so that it wouldn't show up. And so we had all sorts of things that we would try for this, and eventually it worked out fine. But
that is so funny to hear, because I think that I've seen an episode of Corridor Crew. Do you know Corridor Crew?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm.
The YouTube channel, they're also in LA. They're doing all of these VFX, and they talked, I think, about specifically this situation. And I think they had a special effects supervisor on the show to talk about it also. And now to hear that, just to hear the same problem from different perspective, from firsthand, because you've been working on the colors for the movie, if I'm right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's so funny to see how small the world of a place really is it not?
Well, yeah, and what was funny too with Batman was that when the film arrived, the cans were labeled Second Sight, and it was Second Sight reels 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I said, why did you label it Second Sight? He says, because we don't want to know anybody. We don't want anybody to actually know that we're transporting a print of Batman around. So the idea is that if we put Second Sight on it, this is a lousy movie. They said it's a movie that nobody's going to want to watch. So we said we put that on it, and it says, and nobody will look a second time to it. Yeah.
Okay, I understand. So it was kind of incognito then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What were some of the movies that inspired you back in the day? I mean, from what I've gathered now is that you had an exceptionally great intro into movies, because you had access to the projectors, to many movies, you knew people in the industry. You could basically see any movie that was coming out at the time and was already made. Was it something that stood out to you specifically where you would maybe credit this kind of made me wanted to go into the film industry?
Oh, I don't think a title, anything in general. It was more just maybe multiple titles in general, and things like that. It wasn't one particular title or anything like that. Yeah.
Top three at gunpoint right now. What would you say?
Well, 2001 Space Odyssey is a number one probably thing. Another one is Gone with the Wind. Yeah.
Mhm.
And those are probably the top two that I would point out. Yeah.
But you won't give me a third one.
Okay. Well, third one, let's see. What can we come up with a third one? I would say Forbidden Planet. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
Yeah.
I will ask you some more questions, but from what I think, the podcast episode for this first episode is about to conclude right now. But
Okay.
just to look at, looking at the clock. But I would really love to also go a little bit deeper into some of the Disney stuff because,
Sure.
from what I understand, you spend quite a lot of time at the Golden Oak Ranch. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, some interesting stories, some that you've skipped over in the past when we talked. I would really like to go into that because you dropped some interesting actors' names and actresses' names, which I want to talk about still. And then
Sure.
I would really love to have a bit more of a chat about your work because you've not only been a spectator and been in the environment of great movies, you've worked and put your stamp on some great movies. And
Thanks.
that's really something that I want to get to know more about.
Okay, perfect. Okay, excellent.
Nice. Okay, then we'll probably hear again next couple of weeks, maybe next week, and set up the next interview. And
Okay.
very much looking forward to getting more answers out of you.
Okay, my pleasure. Okay.
So everybody listening, I'm very keen to go through second stage and doing the second episode. I hope you are as well. We're going to cover some very interesting things, I believe, and I hope that I will, I guess, see or hear you for the next episode.
Great. Wonderful.
Great, Blake. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay, thanks a lot.
Till next time, I'd say.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Thank you.